Excellent. Well, thank you everybody so much for being here today. I deeply, deeply appreciate it, especially on a Monday night. And I know it's a busy part of the semester. It's a busy part of the year. We just had daylight savings change, which is making it really, really dark right now. So I know that's a little bit of a difference. And so I greatly appreciate everybody being here. If you have a chance in the chat, if you could please put your name and a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, if you're a student, if you currently work with students, that will be helpful to us. Also, at any time, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Also, feel free to mute yourself if you would like to ask a question or raise your hand. Any of the features that you would like to use are comfortable with us. We're just looking forward to having an engaging workshop where hopefully what we share today will be of use to you. Excellent. I love seeing all these different things that are coming through. Outstanding. On this front here, on the front screen right now, I do want to mention on the left-hand side, the Teach for LA workshops just started today. So we literally have 20 days of, or maybe not 20 days, 15 days of free workshops with all sorts of different topics. And so if that interests you, please check out the teachla.org website where you can register there for a huge amount of other workshops that are coming up this month. We also have a fantastic keynote speaker who on the very last slide, I'm going to share his contact information and his information for his presentation. But if you can join us this Friday, there's going to be an impactful speaker that we have coming. For this workshop, my name is Renee Marshall, and I'm going to be focusing on strategies for success with distance learning. And I'm coming from a really different perspective on this. I am somebody who, I was in charge of teacher preparation at a community college for well over a decade. And teacher preparation has been my heart of my career. And it's really, for those of you who know me, they really know it's part of like my soul and who I am. And so part of this presentation is absolutely about teachers and what that looks like, distance learning. But, you know, tips you can give families you're working with, kids you're working with, things like that. But also this workshop is meant to be practical for us. So I'm assuming that all of us are in a distance learning some format of some sort, whether that's a remote work situation or a remote schooling situation. In addition to that, many of us are working with our own children or children in our family or children in our neighborhood, trying to help them in this remote world that we're in right now. So it's a workshop that's really meant for a lot of different people, and I hope that it's useful. That's always my goal. The workshop is about an hour long. I will stay on after for any questions people have. And so if you've got a burning question, please know that I absolutely want to be a resource to you. I want to be of help to you. And if we, for some reason, run out of time tonight, I will absolutely share my email with everyone. And I encourage you to get in touch with me. I see in the chat that somebody has asked about certificates. Absolutely, we have certificates for you. So what will happen is when the workshop is done, I'm going to pull my analytics from Zoom, because I want to make sure if I say you attended an hour workshop that you weren't just here for 5 minutes, but that you were here for the hour. You know, that's really important ethically to do that. And so we have the frame of the certificate created. You will email me and let me know, Renee, I attended strategies for success with distance learning. And within probably 24, 48 hours at the most, I will send you back a certificate. It honestly depends how many people request them. If I have, like right now, we have 44 people. If I have all 40 of you request, it might take me not 40 hours, but it might take me 2 days instead of 1. But I will make sure that anybody who needs a certificate will absolutely get one. And I want to give a special thanks to Leah Martinez. She is the person who came up with this entire concept for this workshop series. She's been rolling out a ton of different resources for future teachers and for teachers in our community. And Leah was the person who said, you know what, we need to make sure we have a certificate so that way our people are covered. And so Leah Martinez is just a huge resource. If you don't know her, get to know her. She's at Rio Hondo College. She runs teacher preparation on the campus, and she's a resource for anybody both across the state and even outside of California. So with that, let's start talking distance learning. So with this workshop, Strategies for Successful Distance Learning, we're going to be focusing on very specific areas. We're going to, in the chat, make sure you put your name, where you're from. If you have a student, and if you do have a student, please let me know their gender, their age, just some ideas about them, and then any questions you have. This workshop is also going to be looking at specific areas of distance learning. First of all, we're going to talk about optimal environment and what that means for an optimal environment. We're going to talk about essential supplies that are really helpful to have, strategies for success with distance learning, tips for balancing this new world that we're living in, celebrating school year successes, and also making sure we have some time for Q&A. Excuse me while I take a quick drink. Now, this first visual, setting up your learning environment. Look at this. It's clean, it's new. Doesn't it look pristine? Doesn't it almost look like Instagram or Pinterest? This is what I think we're all kind of striving for when it comes to this concept of distance learning and what does it look like in our environments and whatnot. And the reality is, we're not living in a Pinterest world, okay? For those of you who can make these Pinterest environments happen, hats off to you. But for the rest of us, I'm gonna be honest, the rest of my house does not look like this background where it's totally blank and doesn't have papers or anything anywhere. It looks kind of chaotic. I'm in a household right now where we have 4 of us that are both distance learning and also distance working. And so I wish I could say that, you know, that really cute guy on the bottom left-hand corner is what my house looks like. No, not that case. So let's get real about distance learning, okay? Because this is realistically what it might be looking like for you. You might be a teacher right now who's going in the classroom to give lessons or working remotely from home. You might be a future teacher who's like, you know, trying to take your coursework right now, trying to do observations, trying to go into a preschool classroom, trying to do whatever you can to get that learning, that maximum learning in this new world. You also might be like the picture in the middle here on the top, where literally you've got one space where you've got multiple children and multiple adults working simultaneously. You may have the luxury of being one of the examples of, you know, somebody working with only 1 or 2 people close by, but it really might be a little bit chaotic. I also want to point out the reality of the picture in the middle of the bottom of this slide, because I wish I could take a picture of what my room looks like right now. Before COVID and before all of this, I used to sit in a computer with a regular, like I'd open my blinds and it would just be like a regular day. I'd have the window open. Not anymore. Now I'm in this controlled environment where I have to keep my blinds shut or else they do these polka dots down my face. I can't open my window because the fire station's too close. And so you hear the sirens too frequently and then it messes up people's sound. I also right now currently have 3 different lights on me. So that way I look like refreshed and like, ooh, it's like, you know, almost like a filter. I wear more makeup on Zoom than I've worn in real life for the last 9 months. So I think one of the things that's really important that we talk about is what we're experiencing is unheard of. It's a whole new normal and things aren't normal. So one of the biggest things I want to share with you and with everybody you're working with right now is that be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and show grace and have grace. Because right now I think a lot of people are like beating themselves up and thinking they're not, you know, oh, it's messy or I don't have a good background or whatever. We're all in this whole other world. Just be who you are and be okay with that as much as possible. And for those of you working with students, you need to keep that mantra as well. I recently had one of my friends who's got a child in 4th grade. And the teacher that this child is working with had a pet showing day. And so the child showed his pet during the class day. During break, he was also allowed to play with his pet. And then during one of his classes later on that afternoon, his cat jumped up on the desk and he got reprimanded for having the cat and touching it during class. For a 9-year-old in 4th grade, you know, having 2 opportunities in one day to have your cat engaging with the classroom is really tangible. So why wouldn't the 3rd opportunity have been okay? You know? Excuse me. Now I'm saying that because it was an interesting kind of a situation. And I know that cats and animals can be distracting. So I'm not saying you have to do that all the time, but I think it's important that we, you know, think about these interactions we have and we value the interactions and kind of like let the small stuff drip to the side. Excuse me, I have to cough a little bit. I apologize. Thank you for your patience while I was coughing there. Sorry about that. couple things about setting up a distance learning environment. First of all, you got to have a quiet space as much as possible, free from distractions. How many of you are struggling with this? Because I am. Is there anybody else who's struggling with this right now? Okay, I see a hand. Who is one person that can share with me a little bit about this whole like space and the free from distraction idea? How do we make that happen? Do we have one person who would share?
Mine's not necessarily distraction from noise. I'm in the corner of my room with so much stuff around me that it just makes me literally insane some days. Just looking like there's a desk next to me, there's a bed over here, there's my dresser over here. It's like I want flowers and I don't know, just to look different than what it does. That's where I struggle.
Am I in an episode of Hoarders? Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff around me. And it's tricky because I would like to think that we all have space. And the reality is for us and for our students, space is often a huge concern. So if you're working with somebody and they've got a sheet behind them, or if they've got a bookshelf that's filled, or whatever that environment is, like I said before, have grace and be kind. But let's talk about creating a workspace, because the reality is we're going to be in this environment for a while now. So you've got to be able to have a workspace that's going to work for you. In the corner in a bedroom, definitely not optimal. So then you have to say to yourself, what can I do to optimize this? And I'll actually show you something later that might be helpful for you. It's a really strange suggestion, but I found some people have had really good success with it. For many of us, we don't have a shared space, excuse me, we don't have our own individual space. It's more like a shared space. It could be that you're set up on a kitchen table. It could be that you're jimmy rigging something to hold, you know, one of the things I've seen frequently with Zoom is people will be on their laptops and they'll put like 2 or 3 reams of paper and their laptop on top in order to have it high enough. You know, we're constantly trying to figure out how we can make this work. One of the things though that's important to know too, if you have the opportunity for private learning environment, that is great depending on the age of the person you're working with. So for instance, if you're working with like a 4th grader, like that boy with the cap, guess what? Sending him to his room to work independently is not going to be the best bet for a 9-year-old. And here's why. 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, they work really differently than us. They work really differently than adults. Think about how distracted we could get and now magnify that 10 times. So putting a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old in their own private bedroom or own private office to work is not going to be optimal in this type of environment. This is when you need to find a shared space. Now, if you're talking about us as adults, or even, you know, it depends on the child. You have some 14 and 15-year-olds that will do great in an individual environment, working in their bedroom or something like that and trying to get their work done. Then you have other people at that age who will fail if they are put in a space where they don't have anybody giving any accountability. And so you would think they have accountability to their screen and their teachers and the people they're engaging with. Not always the case. Another thing too, for anybody who is going into a private space, and me included, I need to move my cell phone out away from my computer. How many of you guys deal with that too? It's like, you know, you're texting or there's notifications coming up and things are popping up. I am literally conscientiously either moving it away or flipping it upside down and making sure it is on mute. Now, I love this. I see smiles, so I'm not alone on this one. Here's the thing. Children won't moderate that like we do. Think about how hard it is when you're waiting, you know somebody's going to be texting you or you're being in touch with you and you're trying to be present, right? How present are you when you're like this? And guess what? When we are online, we can tell. Because when you're like this, it's so obvious. So it's one of those things where if you know something like a phone is going to be a distractor, move it. Think about kids too. What's going to distract them? A TV, a radio, a PlayStation, any sort of computer, any sort of like gaming device. You can't have that in the space where that person's trying to learn or trying to work. You have to redesignate that space as a workspace or a learning space. And it might not be that you can keep it every 24 hours like that. Like, you know, if you're in your bedroom and that's where you're doing your work, then you need to be willing at a certain time each day to shut it down and put it away, because your bedroom cannot be your workplace 24 hours a day, or it cannot be your school place 24 hours a day. You need to make sure you've got some peace and quiet and some kind of sacred places. Oh goodness, I see Deborah saying they're at her school, they're not even allowed to have the kids show their faces. So they're literally playing video games and doing other things. It's really tricky because in terms of equity, I understand the concept of not wanting to require backgrounds. When I was an elementary teacher, I had a kindergartner who I did a home visit, and I found out she lived in a house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath and 12 people. So for that child, she might not want to show her background, and I understand that. But when it's automatically that you don't show background and that becomes the norm, I think it lends itself to kind of multitasking and doing other things. I love this. And Henry just tell your kids to put the headphones on, LOL. That's another thing too. And I'm so glad that Henry brought that up. I've got one child, and I have 14-year-old twins, both in 9th grade, both starting dual enrollment in college at the same time. I have one child, both work in their bedrooms. I have one who wears headphones and keeps the door shut. And I have the other one who wears one headphone, the other headphone off, and keeps the door open. Oh, I love it. I see somebody else that, right? See, but you have to find what works for you. And you have to find the strategies that work for you. And if you have a child, like if you're engaging with kids and you're seeing something off, check in with their parent, because if they've already determined that that's going to be a successful norm for that child, who are we to say, who am I to say, you know what, Jessica, put your headphones on both ears or take them off? I'm not even there. Like if she's engaged, then what's the big deal? So we kind of have to be looking at it from a very different way. I love this too. We have somebody else who just put, distance learning has been so hard for all children. When it comes to learn, they just shut down and don't want to do nothing. How do we help them out? Engaging in a virtual environment is very different. Another thing I'm going to say, if you have the opportunity to work with kids right now, please take the time to handwrite a letter and get it in their hands. I know of a child, the mom posted last week about every week there's this one teacher, they do like a drive-through and the teacher hands out packets because it's a younger grade and like other resources. And every single week that teacher writes a note to all 20 of her students. And I didn't know about this until a mom posted in our local mom site and said, every Friday when my child gets this note, she takes it home. I can't even say it without getting emotional. The child holds it next to her heart. She physically holds the letter to her body for comfort. And then they put it up on the refrigerator.
Oh.
Understand how tangible that is for a child. They feel like they have a piece of you. I have a friend who runs a fantastic preschool. At the start of COVID, she and a friend, they have 56 kids that go to the preschool, depending on what days of the week it is. They hand stitched 56 felted hearts filled with like little bean bags with lavender in them for all the kids and mailed them or dropped them off at their home. So that way they had something tangible to hold, to touch, to be able to relate it to school. So if you have the opportunity to work with younger children, please keep those things in mind. I'm going to go back to this slide too. I mentioned watching your phone usage and access. Don't multitask. Don't tell kids that it's normal to multitask. Don't tell college students it's normal to multitask, because then we start thinking, what's wrong with me that I can't do 75 things at one time with 100% accuracy? Multitasking is not as effective as people think it is. So if you're present in a class, commit to yourself to be present in that moment. The multitasking can wait later. And that's really hard to do, really hard to do. I love it. SEL, social emotional learning, social emotional health for teachers as well as students. We're not seeing it so much for teachers right now. We're seeing districts send out messages going, hey, we're just sending out an email, making sure you're emotionally okay. Everybody's struggling right now. Everybody's struggling right now. And I do believe Henry just said multitasking is something that can be learned older. I agree with you, but I think for youth, it's not right, not yet. Another thing for our supplies, you want to have them easily accessible. I ran into this myself today. I was in a meeting, I was taking notes, and I ran out of note-taking paper. So in the meeting then I'm like this, like, hey, maybe they won't notice that I'm leaning to the side, totally awkward. And it wasn't effective. I had my supplies too far away. Think about the top 5 things you need, and they should be within your hand reach. You don't want the top 10, you don't want the top 20, because then it turns into a hoarder situation, or it turns into a distracting situation. I don't know about you. I like fun pens. Fun pens can be a problem. If you have them, like you will them and you do all sorts of stuff. So you want to make sure you keep supplies that are like your tools. You don't want your supplies to be distractions. A couple bonuses that I think are really good. If you have the opportunity to have a plant, somebody mentioned flowers. I'm going to be really honest with you. That was one thing I promised to myself at the beginning of COVID. I have kept fresh flowers in my house the entire, 9 months, because whenever I'm having a day and I see something fresh and growing and beautiful, I can breathe, and I feel like it's almost like a vacation for me. So find what your vacation is. Maybe it's sitting outside and having a mint. Maybe it's having flowers in your house or buying a plant. My best friend and I, we've officially become succulent obsessed during this time as well. And so we've started growing succulents. So this is the time to do something alive and keep something alive near you. In addition, anytime you can have window air and any natural light, anything like that, ability to stand, ability to move around, those are the kinds that, kind of things we need to look at. Oh, I love this. Deborah just mentioned, my students love the pictures in my home, but they love more when I'm working from school and see stuffed animals on their desks. How fantastic that you're representing them. They'll really appreciate that. A couple other points for creating a learning environment at home. You want to make things accessible. You want to keep them nearby. You want to not have a ton of clutter. You want to make sure that your environment is a personal environment. And that's kind of tricky, but especially for anybody working with kids and teenagers, if they're struggling with their online learning, look at the environment that they're working in and think, what can we do to make it better? If you've got a kid, or if you're a person who loves the DIY, like the do-it-yourself kind of movement, like grab some toilet paper rolls, hold on to them for a little bit, tape them together, have that person decorate them and turn them into a pencil holder, come up with ways to engage with the environment, create things for the environment, personalize the environment, because that's going to make that child feel better, but it will make them also more effective. And it's not just children, it's us as well. Personalize your environment. And if something's going to make you more comfortable, invest in it. For me, I invested in a new little fan. It's really nice because this room I'm in, is, for some reason, stays so much warmer than the other rooms in my home. And so having this nice little fan here makes a huge difference. Another thing too, make sure you have routines. You've got to have routines in place, or else we will not be able to sustain this. And I think we're seeing the people that don't have routines are really, a lot of people are struggling right now, but I think even more so when people don't have a set routine. Another thing too, you have to be looking at learning gaps. So if you yourself figure that you're like, there's a gap or there's an inconsistency with your learning, or you're working with a child and you see a gap or an inconsistency for your learning, you really have to pay attention to that. Because in the past, in those environments, when you were in a classroom, you had somebody else that was constantly monitoring. But in a two-dimensional world, it really becomes like a joint responsibility to make sure that those gaps are filled. And it could be a matter of you asking for other resources, or reaching out and saying, hey, professor, this is what I need. Can you help me? Or, hey, teacher, this is what my child needs. Can you help me? And that's okay to do. None of us know how to do this. We have never done this before. We are all learners right now. And so even for people who consider themselves experts in online learning, it's a whole new world. And so embrace it, go with it, be okay with it. You know what I mean? And be okay with wherever you are and wherever your students are as much as possible. Another thing I do want to point out, the idea of making sure that you stop and eat, you stop and have snacks, you stop and breathe, you stop and get water. I felt like I had teacher bladder when I was a teacher. Now I've got Zoom bladder. I literally will go like 9 hours and I'm like, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, I haven't stopped at all. Like, it's not healthy. So we need to literally have breaks and have like sacred times. I've recently started working with a new group, and it was kind of uncomfortable to have to say like, hey, I want to let you know that on, Monday and Wednesday, one of my kids goes to campus for an hour, and the campus is 15 minutes away. And so for about 2 hours every Monday and Wednesday afternoon, I disappear. And I wish I could be in meetings, but I have one ring of reception when I'm up at the school. And so fortunately, people are being so nice about it. And so like, be okay. And just, be truthful about whatever's going on. I love the idea too, in the chat box here, this idea of brain breaks with students. We need brain breaks for ourselves. We need brain breaks for kids, for everybody. None of us should be sitting in front of a computer for honestly probably much longer than an hour without a break. And a break can be as simple as I'm gonna open my window and look at the horizon for 15 seconds, because when you look at something like a horizon or the sky, it grounds you. I'm going to do a brain break where maybe I just stand up and I stretch up and I stretch out and I move my arms, or do some, going across the middle line. That's, you kind of realign your body when you do cross activities. And what I love that Adriana just mentioned, Go Noodle. Go Noodles for every age too. If anybody who thinks it's not for older people, it's a scam. Go Noodle is fantastic. Just put on some old jam that you love and get up there and boogie and have a good time. It's really important. Another thing too, and this is something I personally struggle with, make sure you get outside every day. And even if the weather's not great, even just step outside to breathe the fresh air. That's one of those things that I have not done enough. And sometimes it backfires and it makes me not healthy. And so it's really, really important to do that. Another thing too that they mentioned here that I think is important, leaving room for failure. Know that you will have some failure and try to be comfortable in that. I know that if anybody's a perfectionist, failure can feel like it's the end of the world. We're in a pandemic, so let yourself, give yourself some grace and be okay. And if you fail, like, pick yourself up or get some resources and we'll help you. That's, I think one of the biggest things too is sometimes we may perceive like we're failing, but we're not. So who is your person to talk to? Because we all need to have at least one friend or one person that can talk us out of this right now. So if there's anyone on here who's struggling and you don't have somebody to talk to, when I give my email, like, I'm serious. I'm somebody who can be a resource. I will absolutely talk on the phone. I will absolutely be a friend and a colleague and a resource, because that's who I am. And I really do believe that the way we're going to get out of this is by staying in this together, as much as possible. Very much so. Oops. Okay, another little kind of a visual here that I thought would be good. Well, I like it because it's got the phone with the big no sign, because that's a reminder to me as much as possible. I think that's an important one too. One of the things I really liked about this is it literally says, leave your phone in another room. And I think that's a really, really, really good strategy. Also, Charlene just put something up. Thank you, Charlene. This is a great strategy. I'm glad you shared this. You can do 20, 20, 20. Look 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes. And that is just something that grounds you. It helps you. It gets you away from the digital and just kind of looking at something else. It seems so silly to have to have a reminder to, set a timer for a work break. That's where we're at right now. We have to do a reminder to eat, a reminder to take a break, a reminder to go outside. For those of you who have Alexa, she's great at harassing you. If you need to set reminders, she'll tell you every day. And for those of you who don't, just make sure you've got somebody who checks in with you. It's really, really important. Another thing that I really want to mention is how essential it is to have some sort of calendar or schedule that is visible. If it's for you, of course, if you have it in your if your phone or whatever, that's great. If you're working with kids, though, it needs to be literally a tangible schedule that's on the wall. And I will just rip this down to showcase. Right next to my wall, I've got my kids' calendar and their schedule. They're in high school. They go to different classes every single day. You add distance learning to it, it's a whole nother ball of wax. And so I literally just keep it up there. So if at any time, actually just today, I accessed it. I looked up and I was like, oh, do the kids get Veterans Day? They have a vacation day next week. They're going to be shocked, so you want to make sure you have those things accessible as much as possible, because you don't want to have to find that kind of stuff. So that's why you just want it nearby. Another thing that's mentioned on this page that I want to share too, set small rewards for when goals are met. I do that for myself, not just for kids. And that's just healthy. We're in this very strange time continuum right now. Did anybody watch Twilight Zone growing up? Like the old school Twilight Zone? Okay, a couple are shaking. I literally feel like At some point, I'm going to wake up and somebody stepped on my glasses and smashed them. And it's the last pair of glasses in the world. Some of you will know that reference from like the 60s or 70s, whenever it was. But Twilight Zone is kind of like what we're living in right now. And, you know, especially with everything going on with the election tomorrow, too, there's going to be more disequilibrium before everything equalizes. So, again, be kind, show grace, because that's what we got to do right now. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about what kind of essential supplies we want to have for distance learning. Now, most people have computer, Chromebook, Wi-Fi access. If you don't, we need to find resources for you. If you are I'm going to say this because this was one of my nephews in spring. If you are a college student who is currently working on your phone, thinking that you can do a whole semester or a whole year on your phone, you are incorrect. And we have resources on all of our campuses to help you. So contact me. I can help you find who on your campus can help you at least borrow a computer, if not give you a computer. Right now is not the time to try and do it on your phone. Like I mentioned, one of my nephews, he was offered a computer by his high school and he said, no, thank you. And then my sister goes, wait, my sister who's a teacher and her husband who's a principal said, wait, how are you doing your schoolwork? And he goes, oh, on my phone. Your senior year of high school, you're writing essays on your phone? Not a good plan. So we want to make sure that we've got that for everybody. In addition to that, you want to have the schedule posted. Like I mentioned, if you have set Zoom links, have them posted or have them on a document on your computer where you can just cut and paste them easily. You want to make sure that you just have whatever needed right there. You think about if you go to the doctor, do you want the doctor to be like, hold on, I need to go into like a room to go look for the thing I need to treat you? No, you expect that doctor to come prepared. If you're a student, you come prepared. If you're a teacher, you come prepared. So sometimes that just means stepping back and reassessing your space and going, okay, what is taking my time right now? What don't I have handy? What do I need to get? Another thing too, I want to mention lighting. Halo light, some sort of good light makes a huge difference. Another thing too, blue light glasses. It's fascinating because for some reason, I don't see many adults on my Zoom meetings wearing their blue light glasses, myself included. But my children, who are both 14, as I mentioned, wear blue light glasses all day long. And it is really hard to work on the phone. I agree, Elizabeth. And one of the things with the blue light glasses that shocked me, you know, you hear everything about how you get less headaches and all that stuff. Well, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a scam. And then one of my kids asked for them. And one of my kids had been suffering from migraines. And guess what? Since we invested in the 2 pairs of blue light glasses for $15.99, so $8 a pair, we have had 0 headaches. And we're going on over a month now with no headaches. So if you don't have the blue light glasses, get them. It is definitely worth it. And guess what? You don't need to buy the expensive ones. My kid wanted these $25 pair, so we bought one of those, and then we bought the 2 pair for $15.99. The 2 for $15.99 ended up working out better. They even came with a cleaner and a case and all sorts of stuff. A couple other things. I know you guys can read the list, but I just want to just mention a few things. Water bottle. Drink your water. You have got to stay hydrated, and maybe it's a matter of you buy 2 to 3 of these every day and you just keep them in your office. I have to be totally honest. I recently took a little miniature fridge that we had that normally holds 6 drinks out of my kids' space and put it into my office so I could have cold drinks at any time. I bought it online on one of the mom sites for like $10. It was the best thing I ever bought. Now I get a cold drink whenever I'm in the middle of the day, and it's like just a nice little break. Something so small, but something small can be huge, especially right now. And also staying hydrated. When we're hydrated, we're healthier. When we're hydrated, we're healthier. When we're rested, we're healthier. Same goes for kids. It's almost like you have to keep that little mantra up, or if you're struggling to get your water in, put a Post-it or some sort of tangible reminder for you, for the child, for anybody, because that's going to help. If you have the opportunity to get the ergonomics supplies, that's great. If you can get a great chair or great back support, fantastic. If you can't, but things are bothering you, start looking into things. Like you could always make a foot lift out of a couple reams of paper. You put 3 reams of paper down or 2 reams of paper down, put your feet on top. You're going to find that you're sitting up straighter, your posture's better, and you're making kind of like your own version of an ergonomic supply. Another thing too, I put this at the very end and I just want to mention it. If you have the ability to have a document camera, any sort of device to, you know, an alternative device, things like that to film assignments, that's great. Hotspots, things that are decorated, DIY, like I mentioned before, or yeah, DIY. Sorry, I always wonder if it's DIY or DIY. You know what I mean, the do-it-yourself stuff. You want to have all those as much as possible. Now, I do mention here a storage cart and shelving, and I've got a little visual to show you later on related to that. So just kind of hold that in your mind. Oh, bingo, here it is. Okay, so this is a great solution. I moved stuff around in here just last night. So, and I'm working on the slides as you're seeing them. So I don't have like a separate set here. So anyways, my friend was running into a situation where she has 3 kids, 2 adults, and they're trying to figure out how to have enough space. She didn't have 5 desks, and her husband are both teachers. So they get the priority on the desks, right? So she was trying to figure out what to do with her kids. And it was during the time where there was the desk shortage. I'm sure some of you lived through the IKEA desk shortage of, I don't know, maybe it was August, September, October. So she ordered some of these carts. They're like $30. She gets them on Amazon. She got one for each kid. And so suddenly they had 2 shelves for all their supplies, including all their school books. And the top shelf, instead of putting supplies on there, she put a hard top, and it becomes a computer stand. So it's literally a movable computer stand that you can, with all your supplies, for $30. So a little bit different, not traditional by any means, but for anybody who's working in like a smaller space or like corner of a bedroom, corner of a room, or say that you don't have an actual designated space and you have to move around daily depending on what's available, then this cart might be a good option for you. Oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong thing there. Let's talk about some strategies for distance learning also, because these are some of the pieces that are so important that we need to know. Engagement for us, engagement for students. You know, somebody mentioned in the chat about how the students aren't required to have their pictures on. I'm going to challenge you. If you're a student, if you're a teacher, I know you're required to do it. If you're a student, I'm going to challenge you this week to put your picture on every day and just see if it changes your engagement. That's all. Just see. Because if it's making a difference for you, then it's making a difference for students as well. And I would honestly have a very serious conversation about the importance of opening up your camera when you're comfortable and seeing if you can encourage people to do that more. Because we're more connected when we can see each other. It's kind of like when we can physically touch each other. That connectivity is substantial. So we need to have engagement in any way possible. Another thing about engagement that we really want to mention also, engagement is not just about work and it's not about school. That's a part of it, but you want to make sure that every single day or every other day or whatever schedule you determine is the healthiest for you is you calling and touching base with people. You know, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your sister, maybe it's your colleague, maybe it's your friend from high school that you haven't talked to in a month or a year or 10 years, but literally make the effort to say, who am I speaking to today? And that's something I actually say with my own kids, because one of the things that I have, one of the things I've seen is the social isolation. And the further we get into the pandemic, the less one of my children is wanting to socialize. And that's not healthy. It's not that I don't want him to have any, I mean, we're being socially distanced with everything we do. You know what I mean? Like every time that somebody comes over, there's only certain people, we only go in the backyard. It's really specific, but we need to have that engagement. We need to have that connectivity. I knew one of my 2 kids today in my own house had a shorter day than the other kid. And so I said, hey, Zach, who are you calling this afternoon? And he goes, oh, I'm planning to call Liz, his cousin. Oh, I'm planning to call Liz. I haven't had a chance to talk to her and John for a couple of weeks, so I thought it'd be fun. And I was so thrilled that he could answer instantly. It wasn't this whole, I don't know. Well, who can I call on a Monday at 2? It wasn't that. It was like, boom. He knew that that was something that I could ask, and he was ready to respond. So make sure to have that engagement. Also, engagement is not just with you and teachers, or teachers and you, or teachers and student, not that way. It's colleague to colleague, it's friend to friend, it's colleague to teacher. It's all sorts of different configurations. So remember that. We mentioned having a schedule and routine. We mentioned the importance of breakfast, lunch, water, snacks, screen breaks. Okay, screen breaks at least every hour, at the very least. Realistically, honestly, between every 30 to like 20 to 30 minutes is better. if you don't take breaks, you're going to get more stressed out. You're going to get more anxiety. It's not going to be a good thing. So say to yourself, I was so pleased today. I was in a meeting today that was 2.5 hours long, and they embedded 2 10-minute breaks. And they didn't just embed them, they honored them. And they said, okay, it's our 10-minute break now. We'll come back at, I don't know, 10:51 or whatever. I mean, it was to the minute. And every single person except the lead went dark screen and literally left their rooms and took a break. And I was so relieved because it's a new group for me. And I'm like, ooh, if they're in 2.5 hour meetings, I'm going to figure out how to learn to pace myself, because I normally do like hour to hour and a half at one time. 2.5 to 3 hours is a lot. And so once I knew that there was those breaks there, it's like, whew, okay, we're going to be good. Okay. Encourage space ownership. I already talked about that a little bit. That's the do it yourself and making sure that you have your supplies you need and your space looks good and it's things that you want. Too many assignments. This is something that we are finding all over the place. And for all of you who are college students right now, I bet you anything, because I remember what this time of the semester is. You almost feel suffocated because there's so much going on, so many moving parts. Too many assignments, you got to break it down. You literally have to write down assignment after assignment on one piece of paper, put the dates next to them, or even better, honestly, I like to do it on Post-its, because then I can move things around and prioritize things. And like, for instance, my own children right now are very, very concerned about a big project they have due November 23rd. I'm like, November 23rd is another planet. So let's worry about what's this week and then next weekend. Let's make a plan for November 23rd, because if we make a plan on November 6th or 7th, that's still plenty of time to be prepared for the 23rd, right? So take away the worries and really set up some planning to make sure that it's, you get things going in the timeline you need to. And if you get to a point where either you or any students that you're working with have backlogged on assignments, that's when it's time to stop and ask for grace. That's when you contact your professor and you have a talk with them and you say, this is what's going on. And chances are a professor is going to say, okay, let's break it down. Let's get you a plan. Let's get you going. Because guess what? We don't want you to fail. We don't ever want you to fail. Okay. Another thing too, in education right now, K-12, I'm going to be totally honest. We have more kids failing than we've ever seen. So we know that distance learning and remote learning is not working 100% right now. And because of that, we have teachers making modifications and understanding that, in a sense, we really have to work on individualizing for kids as much as possible. I love this too. Deborah just said, I give free Fridays. Work on work that you need to and take some breaks. My kids' school just recently did something called a win week, what everybody needs or what individuals need, something like that. And basically the entire week, they did not assign any new content. The students were allowed to work on what they needed to get done, to redo assignments they weren't happy with the grade of that they received in order to get a better grade, or the kids were allowed to ask for enrichment because they didn't need to do any remediation. How powerful for those kids to be given a week where they are in control of their learning and they're able to say, hey, I need you to reteach me. Hey, I got this concept. Let's keep going, or keep me moving. Or to say, hey, I am maxed out and I'm failing. How do I get back on course? Be human right now, you guys. Be human, because that's the only thing that we've all got going, that we all have as a commonality, and we got to work with it as much as possible. Another thing too, for those of you who are working with children, do not micromanage them too much. And I know that that's tempting, especially when kids are little. But remember that when we make children think and we make children plan, we increase their executive function and we increase their skill set for later in life. So please don't micromanage. A lot of parents are literally like sitting in the corner. I saw this thing recently where she was like, photosynthesis, photosynthesis. And the kid's like, photosynthesis. And the teacher's like, you're right. And you see the mom like cracking up in the background. That's not what kids need right now. They don't need that. I mean, it's one thing if you do that every once in a while and be a little silly about it, but you don't need to micromanage. I love this too. Henry just said, yes, my college assignments, they extended the due dates. Absolutely. In the twilight zone, the due dates are all relative anyways, right? You know, as long as it's all done before the semester. But really having You know, it's such a hard, challenging time that you want to really try to remain positive if possible, and also really having an asset thinking versus a deficit thinking mentality. Okay, because here's the reality: we've all slowed down. I don't know about you, but it's been good for my family. I spent a lot more time with my family and my kids. Um, I sleep more than I've slept in probably the last 10 years of my life. Probably drink more water than I've had in a long time. And as hard as it is, there's a lot of silver linings coming out right now. So, especially for those of us who either have kids in our house or kids in our life, they are looking at us to model how we're going to get through this, not only surviving, but thriving. And so, really make sure, and if you're having a hard day, that's when you reach out to a friend who's going to bring you back. And at the bottom of this list, brain breaks, got to have them as much as possible. Really quick on time management tips: keeping yourself motivated, dividing up the work, don't multitask, keep a routine. I have to be honest, I just like this visual. I thought it was cute. It reminded me of the 70s, you know, like a little Fast Times or something. If anybody wants any of the slides, I'm absolutely happy to share too. I'll put my email up and you can email me and let me know if you want slides, certificates, whatever you would like. I like this one too. This is a little bit more geared towards children, but I like this idea of being steady, being reliable, being resilient. Those are the things I think of first. And I think about being active, absolutely, and then being playful. I think that's really good reminder right now. I think we need to keep some humor, you know, as much as possible. This is another one of those tech tips, and I'm not going to share a ton about this, but I am going to share two things here. First of all, charging station. Create a neutral charging station. This is for all of us. This is not just for the children. This is for all of us. Get our devices away from where we're sleeping. Get our devices and our laptops out of our bedrooms. Move them, even if it's a little shelf on somewhere to the side. You need to make sure that you really start having some sacred places, and that charging station, being able to shut it down and tangibly put it away and plug it in, very, very healthy. Do it with your phone. Do it with your set. I mean, anything you can, do it like that as much as possible. The other thing too, device-free dinners. And I know that things are a little bit different. I feel like I keep saying that, but you might not be all having dinners together or whatnot. Keep your phones, keep the devices away. Have a moment where you don't have to be plugged in. It's really so healthy. Every once in a while, I'll like leave my phone for like an hour and like you kind of feel guilty. And then it's also simultaneously totally freeing. I don't know. It's a very strange kind of mixed bag. I see some smiles and head shaking. Oh my gosh, I am guilty of eating Netflix while I eat. It's totally true. And now this one is a little bit weird and totally doesn't exactly fit in this presentation, but I had to include it because I thought it was relevant. For all of us who are on Zoom, make sure you check your lighting, your sound, your angle, and chatting. Like you just want to make sure that you have like, you know, kind of all the etiquette that goes along with being in the virtual space. And this is something that you can share with your kids too. You know, we don't want them to be in this dark, hidden kind of place. We want to make sure that they feel good about themselves when they're on screen as well. And so those are just some good pieces. Now, tips for balancing, and I don't even know. I got to be honest. It's tricky to balance. I kind of felt like for a while we thought the end date was coming up, you know, at the end of fall and the beginning of winter. And now we all realize that the end date, it's not in sight, not for California at this point. Our number, for those of you who are out of California, in many of our areas, our numbers keep on growing. And so we do need to be reminded that distance education is not our permanent model of education. I think another thing to note too is when we first flipped over in spring, we went to crisis teaching. That was crisis teaching, okay? We have now moved into intentional teaching and learning. So you should see a huge difference between your experience in spring and your experience in fall, whether it's you or children. If you're not seeing that, please get in touch because we need to get some advocacy to help, because you should see a significant change. I mentioned before the importance of staying positive. That is still important. Also staying connected. If you FaceTime, if you go on house party, whatever you do, stay connected. I've started doing something that might seem kind of silly. I'm actually just going to pull it over to show you. My mom is 86 years old. And my mom, she lives in a house across town from me. I've tried to get her to move in with me for years, and she doesn't want to. She's stubborn. which it makes sense where I got my stubbornness. So, but she also has only left her house since March for 2 days. And it was when there was a fire near her house and she had to be evacuated. Other than that, she stepped outside, and I'm not exaggerating at all. She has been outside 4 days, where she stepped outside and we brought a table and she sat outside in the front of her place for a little bit. And besides that, she's been in her home since March. And so we visit her and we do everything we can, but I also live 30 minutes away. And so what I've started to do is I print pictures from my home computer of everyday stuff. Here's my dog sleeping. Here's a picture of my new succulents. Hey mom, I made this really funny shirt for a friend. And I print these and I write her a letter and I send them in a letter. Right now I have 3 different letters that are going out this week with different pictures of carving pumpkins and Halloween and things like that. And it might not be plan A, but it's a way that I connect with her. And one of the things that's been beautiful is I've probably mailed it maybe about 15 letters with pictures during the pandemic. And the thing is just unbelievable. Every single time I stop in her house, the stack of pictures is growing. It sits next to the chair where she spends most of her time watching TV. And she's told me that she goes through the pictures over and over and over again. Another little thing I do too, on the back of each picture, she can't see very well, so in black Sharpie, all right, we're carving pumpkins here. Look, Max is sleeping. It's like I like narrate it a little bit. And again, maybe it's not the plan A for connectivity, but it is connection still. And so we need to encourage that connection. And honestly, for children, we need to demand it. They need to have a connection schedule that needs to be embedded in what they do. It's so, so important, so important. Okay, some of these things I've already said, so I won't say them again, but I'm big on silver linings. I'm big on just, advocating for what's needed. I do want to note, if you are working with students that have an IEP, or if you have an individualized education plan or a 504 plan, which are both special education documents that give you access and give you modifications, if your current learning situation is not working, that document is a tool to advocate for what you need. It is a tool to advocate for what students need. So if anybody's working with people who are in special education, who maybe the distance learning model hasn't been working well, please contact me so we can brainstorm some strategies and some suggestions that could be easily added into an annual IEP or an annual 504 plan. Because the great thing to know, once those items are added to those documents, that's like a contract that by law, the school has to offer those resources and have them accessible to that person. So it's one thing to get a school to agree to give resources. It's a whole nother thing to get it written down into a 504 or an IEP plan. And so you want to make sure that you definitely do that and advocate for that. Another thing too, mandatory screen-free time. You don't always want to be plugged in. So when are you not plugged in? And I will say this to my own children. I'll be like, oh, we've all been plugged in so much. When are we going to unplug? And then my daughter will go like, oh, you know what? Why don't we unplug all day Saturday? We could do blah, 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 blah. And they come up with other ideas. So absolutely want to unplug. I see some questions and some comments in the chat. I love that people are sharing suggestions. Deborah just shared the concept of a good jar there. So make sure you check that out because it reminds us that good things are happening. And it's a tangible way. So I love that as a strategy. Also, Glenda just asked about a certificate. Glenda, absolutely. I will shoot my email in the chat box and just email me after the workshop and I will absolutely get one to you. It may take me about 24 to 48 hours, but I will get you a certificate for sure. Okay, I like this visual too. This is a good one because I'm always looking for low tech, no tech options, not just for the children, but for myself. And I will tell you, oh my goodness, I'm going to be so honest with you. I had 2 fantastic investments during COVID. One of them would cost me $120 and it was an Intex blow up pool, which that blow up pool, I cannot even tell you the thousands and thousands of dollars worth of value we've had during COVID because of that. The other thing, karaoke machine. spent like $70 on a karaoke machine that has 2 microphones. And just on Sunday, excuse me, not Sunday, Saturday for Halloween, my daughter had her 2 quarantine friends over. They were dressed up as Piglet, Winnie the Pooh, and Tigger. They were in matching costumes, the 3 of them. And it was one of the most beautiful sounds to my heart when the 3 of them were on the karaoke singing Don't Stop Believing by Journey at the top of their lungs in my backyard. And I'm pretty sure that every single one of my neighbors also felt some love in their heart to hear some teenagers singing on a karaoke machine on Halloween night. So things are really different in this world, but that's okay. We're going to be okay with it. You know, do things that you haven't done before. You know, for those of you, if anybody's in Santa Clarita who's on here right now, our libraries are doing a fantastic grab and go program where every single week they have different activities where you literally drive up, you call the number, they bring stuff out to you and you take it home. And there's activities for teens, activities for children, activities for adults. There's all sorts of resources. I love this visual too, because it reminds us about things like playing hopscotch, listening, you know, stopping and listing everything that you see, smell, hear, and touch. Do you know how good it is to do grounding exercises? Not just for you, but for any students that you're working with. All really, really great, solid suggestions. Now, this visual is for those of you working with younger children or who have younger children. These are called choice boards. And if you're working with younger children and maybe they get done with their distance learning and they're like, I don't know what to do. You can either print these from online or you can make them yourself. And it's like, well, here's 5 things or here's 6 things. Which one are you going to do today? Oh, great. You're going to go ahead and work on drawing your feet or drawing a kitchen utensil or a shape hunt or whatever the suggestion is. It's just some other ideas of things that you can do. Success and milestones. I want to talk for a few minutes about this. And I see we're coming up on 7, but it's really, really important to talk about this. We need to still have our traditions. We need to still have the things that are normal to us. I know that we've already had back to school night. We've already had opening day. But what else is normal? You know, what else can we celebrate that's a big deal? If the kids are having if the kids normally do something on election day, then what are you doing tomorrow? If the kids normally do something for Veterans Day or Thanksgiving or a holiday, then what are you doing? You know, question yourself. And maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you're not working with kids right now. But what would you normally do if we were not in the middle of a pandemic? You might not be able to do your normal, but do something else to celebrate it. You know, we've done a lot of different parades this year. We've done, just all sorts of different kind of unique ways. Just think about Halloween for anybody who gave out candy last weekend. That was a whole different situation in terms of what that looked like. And guess what? There were people who were doubters who thought it was going to be horrific. I can tell you that any kid that came to my house was totally stoked. I had a cute display. There was all sorts of choice. There was tons of different stuff out. They could pick what they wanted. I think that there's, like I said, some silver linings to some of this, you know, as much as possible. Another thing too, we really want to document this school year. Have you taken any pictures? If you would have normally, you should have. You know, did you get any awards or any sort of celebration? I will tell you, my daughter received a costume award for Halloween on Wednesday last week. We went up to campus and she got to pick up a goodie bag from a teacher. Do you know what a big deal that was for a 9th grader? It might not seem like a big deal. It was a huge deal. Celebrate accomplishments. You finished your midterms? I hope you're partying or at least celebrating. You finished a huge paper or a huge project? That absolutely is reason to celebrate. Right now, we have to be reminded, you know, to celebrate and have some fun. Now, this is one of the final visuals here that is really kind of meant for teachers, but I really think it's just totally relevant. I think we need to really emphasize social emotional learning right now. If people don't feel good, they're not going to learn. So if somebody is emotionally damaged or having a hard time struggling, don't think that you're going to be able to teach them. You need to be able to get to that core root first. You know, what do they say? Maslow before Bloom. I love that because it's the truth. If you don't have the Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, and if your safety needs aren't taken care of, how can we be worried about your academic content and your language and your words that you're using, you know? Another thing too, not one size fits all. So if something is working for you and it's not working for a friend, or if vice versa, if something is working for your friend and you're really struggling, don't think it's about you or what are you doing wrong. Just say, you know what? We are in a crazy situation right now. So it looks like I need to do something different. And maybe it's about talking to somebody else who can talk to you about modifications or about other opportunities as much as possible. Another thing too that's mentioned on here that I think is really good is this concept here of the individual conversation. And this is something that Yadira, who's a faculty member at Rio Hondo and El Camino College, Professor Ariano is one of the best people for this, because there's been many times where Bobby and I have had a meeting with her and she'll go, oh, I was just on the call with one of my students. And we're like, Yadira, it's Saturday. What are you doing? Oh, she really needed me. So we were on for about an hour and a half.
She's on the call now. She finally got on.
Excellent. She was probably on with the student knowing Yadira, you know, and I know those individual conversations take time, whether it's you with students, you reaching out to faculty, or even you reaching out to family and friends. Consider that time an investment in your mental well-being. You wouldn't like not go to the doctor if your arm was broken, right? So just assume that we all got something broken right now. We all got to work on it and be okay with it. So now how are we doing? We're right at 7:02. So not too bad, not too bad. But let's go ahead and open it up. What questions do people have? If there are any questions, no pressure if there's not, but let's go ahead and see if there's any questions right now.
I see some of my students here, so I know they have to have questions.
It is
No pressure.
Monday night late, so I don't want to pressure. But I do want to also just note that even if you don't have questions right now, you absolutely can access us later. We are part of the LA Regional Consortium, and we are here to be of help. That's our goal. We train people to be teachers. That's our area of expertise. But we honestly are good people and trying to help. Okay, we have a great question here. I'm interested in what crisis learning was versus intentional learning. Okay, and that was something that came out of Department of Education from California. Crisis learning was when literally, what was that date? Was it like March 13th or March 18th? I know we were up in Sacramento. Me, Bobby, and Yadira were up in Sacramento, and we were supposed to come home on Friday night, and instead I frantically came home on Thursday night at 12:30 and midnight in order to go grocery shopping before everything. You know, it's just crazy. And so crisis learning is when we literally pivoted to online learning within 3 days as an education system. And so that was people learning the devices and the platforms and all of it as it was happening. That was literally building the plane as it's flying. Okay. Now, intentional learning is fall. We've now had teachers trained. We now have had people on the devices. People have access to the computers, access to the resources. And now it should really be that we are in a different mode of learning. We should really be learning at this point authentically. Now, it might not be perfect. It might not be the same as it was. I don't know if education will ever be the same as it was, but where the idea is now we are making progress as opposed to spring. A perfect example was in my kids' district. I was literally told, just so everybody knows, your kids can only have the grades that they had as of March 18th or better. And so I had a situation where one of my kids was struggling with an assignment, and I looked at my daughter and I'm like, on March 18th, you had an A+ in this class. You don't even have to turn it in at this point. She was like, oh, Mom, that's not ethical. The assignments do. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I guess you're being ethical. That's a good thing. I was just trying to make it less stressful, honestly. I'm like, I don't want any more stress. And so, you know, anytime that we cancel the SATs or we cancel standardized testing, that's a good indicator that we're in a crisis kind of a situation. And even though some of it is still canceled now or some of it's postponed now, we are getting into a new normal, and it is a little different, but we're getting there. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending tonight. I am going to share some more information with you really briefly before we wrap for tonight, but I've got my email there at the bottom. Please be in touch if you'd like a certificate. I hope this was effective and useful. I hope you got a couple nuggets out of this. Hopefully it was a good one. I appreciate everybody showing up tonight. And then I also wanted to share a few things with you. this is a slide here that has the teachla.org website there on the left-hand bottom side. If anybody on here likes my presentation style and would like to attend another workshop, I am giving one more myself this Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. It's on behavior management and positive discipline. And it's coming from a developmentalist perspective. I was a chair of early childhood, and I've been both a kindergarten, elementary school teacher, and a preschool teacher. And so it's going to be talking about some specific strategies for just positive interactions with kids. And so hopefully you can join me. But in addition to my workshop, there's a lot of other workshops that are listed here under www.teachlarc.org. Every single one of them is for free. They are only happening between now and November 20th. So if you can please make sure to check it out soon, we'd appreciate it. We also have a survey link here at the top in this survey. If anybody is able to do it, we would greatly appreciate it, because that is how we're kind of keeping track of how things go in the entire series of workshops. I'm trying to put the link up right now. Shoot, Bobby, if I screw it up, will you put it up? If I think I'm getting it, but I might screw it up. Hopefully that one's good. Okay, another thing too, I really want to point out two other things. On this Friday, we have a guest speaker. Roy Juarez is coming in at 10 o'clock. Roy is so incredibly inspirational. He is a young man who was a homeless student for most of his life, and his perspective on moving around and his education story is one of the most inspiring you'll ever hear. And so if you do nothing else in the workshops, please show up on Friday, because I will promise you it may even be life-changing. It will at least inspire you for the weekend, if not on a more permanent basis. I also want to share with everybody that the Teach for LA Networking and Transfer Fair is happening on November 20th, which is a Friday from 11 to 12:30. There will also be a giveaway at that event for people who live in California. There's going to be some prizes that we're going to be sending out. And so I hope you can join us. Plus the transfer and networking fair should be really good. They have a lot of different representatives from the Cal State system, and there's a student panel, and it should be a really enriching day. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight. Please shoot me an email so I can give those certificates to you. If there's anybody who would like the slide deck or any sort of information I have here, I am always happy to share. And Bobby will be putting this on the teacher preparation website. Bobby, do you mind plopping that in the chat? So if anybody's interested in watching a video again or sharing it with somebody else, Bobby already has my workshop from this morning. It's already posted. It is like a mega this kind of stuff. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Please let me be a resource to you. My name is Renee Marshall. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope this has been an effective workshop for you. Thank you so much for being with me tonight, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.
Really enjoyed it.
Questions, please feel free to stay on.
Thank you.
Of course.